And we are live, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining. This is John with House of Tortured Souls. Tonight, we are very, very fortunate on this cold winter night and the first episode of House of Tortured Souls live for 2018. Mark's in the house. PJ,
Hello.
how are you, buddy?
I'm doing well, thank you. I think you're being too nice, probably, but I appreciate all the kind words.
No, thanks for joining us. I know you and I have been trying to play cat and mouse, so to speak, catching up with each other between your busy schedule, my schedule, work, weather. I understand you actually had to get buried out just last week, wasn't it?
Yeah, the kids have been off school all week because of snow, and I actually missed Monday and Friday from my day job. So yeah, it's been even tonight, a week later after the, I guess blizzard. I mean, we got about a good 7 or 8 inches of snow and ice and sleet and everything. I still got hung up going over to my mom's house earlier. So, but most of it's melting, and it's we've weathered the storm.
Weather through
Pun
the
intended
weather.
stuff. Yeah. But it's about over with, thankfully. And I prefer the cold over heat. But when it's so much snow that it's hard to function in your daily life, that's when I'm like, I'm ready for it to be over with.
It's funny though, because you actually kind of sound like me. I prefer the cold weather, although in the last year or so, I might have put a pound or two on, perhaps. So I usually tell people, I work outside predominantly, and I usually tell people, Fat Boy doesn't like to sweat. So
Yeah.
I pray for this time of year. And I lived in Florida for many years, have recently moved back up to the Northeast in Maryland, where I grew up, and I pray for snow every single day. I absolutely love it. I know it can be horrendous and have problems, but I wake up, look out the window, and I see snow, and I'm just like a big kid. I just absolutely love it.
Yeah, I'm a fan of snow. I would rather freeze to death than sit there and die of heat exhaustion. But yeah, I mean, sometimes it gets annoying, but overall, I prefer the fall over. Now, I like spring weather. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
When it's nice and cool out and that kind of a thing.
Right.
But we don't really seem to have much of a real fall or a real spring anymore. It's like it gets super cold and then you're sweating balls and hating life.
Right.
There's really no middle ground anymore. So I prefer this time of year over sweating balls.
No, agreed. A good pair of shorts and a hoodie or a sweatshirt is definitely a favorite for me. But I am glad to hear that you guys have gone through and weathered everything safely.
Thank you.
So with keeping up, introducing everybody to you who might have been under a rock for the last couple of years, you are quite the busy man, especially in the last couple of years, and especially looking to the future. You have got a lot going on. Would you care to fill people in briefly on the hit or miss of all the things that you've been dabbling with leading up to now?
I guess the long and the short of my background is I've always wanted to be involved with filmmaking, storytelling, like visual storytelling. I got serious about it about 10 years ago, a little over 10 years ago. I made my first feature horror film. And got it out there. It had like a brief DVD run. I think it was like 1,000 copies, so super limited edition. And then I just kind of kept hammering away. And then, you always have projects that are hit or miss. I helped others with their projects. I love collaboration. That's honestly one of the main reasons why I do this. But for me, what really hit was back in 2014 when we made the first volumes of Blood, which was an anthology film. It was it's about some students who get together on Halloween and they each take turns telling essentially what could be a new urban legend, and they're trying to figure out how to create a new urban legend that would perpetuate. And then there's this big twist, and every urban legend that they tell, it all takes place within the confines of a library. And it was kind of my excuse to work with some other filmmaker friends of mine that I'd really been wanting to do an anthology for a while. And then an anthology obviously does give you an excuse to work with others. So that's kind of the genesis of Volumes of Blood. So I came up with the whole concept and everything, and we shot the movie over about 5 or 6 months and released it. And ever since then, it's really been kind of a whirlwind. It's been a very surreal experience. I wouldn't say, the other day, like, somebody made a comment that I've become a superstar, and that's completely ridiculous, because until you're like a household name, then maybe you can claim superstar, but I am nowhere near like a master of horror or anything like that. So I just do this because I'm passionate about it and I love doing it. And when Volumes of Blood came out, I mean, almost across the board, we got 60 or plus reviews, and they were all like good or glowing.
Mm-hmm.
So we started to talk like, was it a fluke? Was did we just, let's see if lightning can strike twice. We wanted to make sure that it just wasn't like a big mistake, that everybody seemed to love this project. So I started Blood Moon Pictures with my new hetero life mate, Eric Huskisson, and we started that back in 2015, and then almost immediately started production on, or pre-production on, Volumes of Blood Horror Stories, which is the sequel. And it does kind of continue on this overall story arc, that this larger picture that's happening. But at the same time, it's also a standalone film, so you can watch it without ever having to have seen the original,
Right.
and still be able to follow along. And there's nuggets and things dropped throughout the film, but ultimately it's in the same vein as the first film, which is kind of our love letter to the horror genre.
Right.
And some people, the second film went out, and it did, I would say, almost as well as the first one. There were a few negative things said about it, but I think it's so heavy-handed with the references and things like that. You get some people who nerd out about it, and then you have other people who are like begrudged by the fact that it names characters after horror directors and stuff like that. But I mean, if you go all the way back to films like, I mean, it's nothing new, and Night of the Creeps did it. A lot of those characters are new. So it wasn't necessarily that we were trying to break new ground or anything, but I did kind of get tired of the way that a lot of anthologies were being made. I was sick and tired of the YouTube structure, where it just felt like a bunch of random YouTube videos slapped together, and there's you'll have like 8 or 9 movies in one collection, and one's 3 minutes and one is 14 minutes, and you usually hate most of them, and they vary in quality, and there's no consistency. And I was just like, why are we making these anthologies? And it just I was starting to get turned off by the subgenre. And
Right.
that's when I was like, we should try to do something a little bit different in that respect. But ultimately, we still want to have fun with it. And people either love it or they hate it. And thankfully, I and everyone that has worked on the project has been really fortunate for the reception that the projects have received.
Now, I must agree. I think they've been going over well. I haven't heard personally anything bad myself over it. Before I delve too much into questions, now, you said, of course, you are a filmmaker. Was it always meant to be a horror filmmaker?
Well, horror has always been my first love.
Okay.
I mean, this goes back to, it's ironic, because the film that really set me off on the course of being a horror lover, or a horror fan, was Ghostbusters.
Nice.
And then from Ghostbusters, it went to like Return of the Living Dead and the Monster Squad. And it's just, I consumed and have consumed a pretty steady diet of horror films ever since I was about 5 years old. And I was really lucky in the respect that I had a mom who was pretty supportive in the fact that she knew that it wasn't real. Now, of course, it was like if a sex scene came on or there was some like really gratuitous or graphic nudity. Yeah, it was PJ, turn your head.
Right.
That kind of thing. Which I do that too. And honest, what the thing is I'm actually not as lenient as my mom. My mom would probably would have let me watch Saw.
Right.
And I am not going to let my kids right now watch Saw. My oldest is pushing that age to where he's getting there.
Right.
But my youngest is only 6, so I'm not letting him watch those movies. But anyway, my grandmother was kind of she was the individual that really, like, that was her thing. She loved horror films and horror TV shows, and so she was always watching like The Night Stalker and The Hitchhiker and Twilight Zone and stuff like that. And she, as you know, horror is big, but not everybody likes that genre. So she had a tough time finding someone that would spend an inordinate amount of time enjoying horror films and things with her, and that became me. Right. So I became like her horror movie buddy, and that's so once I started getting older, and I decided that I wanted to start doing filmmaking, and I got really interested and more heavily involved in it. Yeah, horror was kind of the direction I always wanted to go. I did other things. When I was younger, I did like a rip off of Power Rangers, and I tried to do Jackie Chan action type, kung fu movies. And
you wear the tights and run around the park, didn't you?
No, it was sweatpants. Actually, it was even more sad than tight. But because I was a fat ninja. I was Beverly Hills Ninja before before it was popular. It was really sad. But in all honesty, the very, very first full feature length movie I made was a comedy, and it's pretty bad. It has a few scenes in it that were funny. But overall, it was just really bad. But it was my first real effort to try to make something beyond and learn new skills like editing. But this was back when it was non-linear, so it was or linear, so it was tape to tape. Okay. And so literally we were like SVHS to SVHS tapes, because back then Super VHS, that's where it was at. So this was like in the late 90s into the early 2000s. And so anyway, then I made for a class. I was in college. I made a short, which was a slasher film, because I've always been a huge slasher fan. Sure. And then I moved to Florida. I got a job doing VIP tours at Universal Studios, but we shared on the production lot, we shared a trailer with like production assistants and some producers and stuff like that. So I actually gave them a copy of that feature-length comedy I made, which was awful. And they gave me some really good advice, but they also gave me like a pat on the back and were like, "You're really on your way." But I think that was just them being nice.
Sure.
And but the one really strong thing I took away from the advice they gave me was, if you're going to do something, you need to make what you want and have a vision for it, but also try to be as marketable as you possibly can. Right. That way, because the whole purpose of even making films is like, it's great when you're starting out and everybody who works on it is your friend and your family, and your mom's the camera operator and all that stuff. And it's like, your premiere is in your basement with all your friends and that kind of a thing. But eventually you have to get away from that. Sure. So that's kind of what I took away from what they told me. They said, you have to make something marketable. It can't just be about you and your friends having a good time. You have to kind of keep going to the next level every time you do something. So I ended up, it was the first really bad hurricane season. This was 2004, the summer of 2004. So I actually had moved to Florida so I was there for a very brief time, and I came back to Owensboro, and this was, of course, after I told everybody, you will never see me again. I'm never coming back to the small town. I'm going to go off and be the next Spielberg and all that crap, you know. So I tucked my tail. I came back home, got a job back at the TV station I'd worked at before I left.
Guys like me.
Yeah. So yeah. So no offense.
Sorry.
But yeah, no. And I'm still that guy. So it's like, so the first thing I did when I came back is I made a sequel to the really bad comedy.
Okay.
And it actually locally it got a ton of attention, and it was the first time that I'd ever been on like the front page of the newspaper around here and that kind of a thing. And we had a real premiere for it, and we had quite a few people show up, and that was really cool. But as fun as it was to make a comedy's really difficult. And I'm not saying that like making a horror film is not difficult, because there's a lot of cogs that come into play when you make a horror film, especially when it's special effects heavy. So but, you know, I enjoyed making comedies, but at that point I was like, all right, I'm going to try again for another project, but I want to do horror this time. So that's when I made Hallows Eve Slaughter on 2nd Street, which was, you can Google the name and you'll find reviews and you'll find out stuff about it. There's trailers out there and stuff like that. But really it was that's when I got serious, and I said, all right, I'm going to do this, if not for the rest of my life, at least as a professional hobby. And I'm going to take this very serious, and I'm going to network, and I'm going to learn the trade, and I'm going to figure out how to do marketing and promotions and producing. And I'm going to learn all the different facets that there are to make the film, and to actually get it out there so a real audience can see it, not just my hometown or, you know, friends and family and that kind of a thing. So that was my first real experience. Now, what happened was I made the horror film. It was kind of it was my homage to Scooby-Doo, because I love Scooby-Doo.
Sure.
I sat down and like I did research, and by research I mean I watched all 3 seasons of Scooby-Doo. And when I made Hallows Eve, if you watch it, it's literally an adult version of Scooby-Doo, right down to the characters and their costumes and the killer. And there's even and I wouldn't have gotten away with it too if it wasn't for you tagline at the end and everything. So I mean, it's literally Scooby-Doo.
Pulls off of them at the end.
It's a little bit more graphic than Scooby-Doo, and there's a lot. As a matter, it's funny because my grandmother, who loves horror, was at the premiere, and when she came up to me when it was over with, she goes, "I really liked it, but did you have to make a movie that had so much cussing and gruesome stuff in it? Like, did there have to be that much blood and cussing?" And I'm like, "Yeah." So I got the movie out there, and it got mixed reviews, but the very first review I ever got, that was also, ironically, the worst review I've ever gotten. And my 6-year-old's standing over here like watching. Hey. So what happened is it's like I can vividly remember some of the things that it says, like, lots of blood and quirky music do not make you Quentin Tarantino. Wow. Okay. Yeah. So those things really resonated with me, and I was crushed. I'm a lot better now. Now I have much thicker skin, and it doesn't bother me if someone hates the movie. I'm like, all right, well, you know, you didn't like it, and that's fine. You can not like it. That's no big deal. But at the time, I was like, all right. You know, and then we got a good review, and then we get another bad review, and then a good review, and then 3 bad reviews. And finally I was like, all right, I think what I need to do is I need to maybe, I tried my hand at the like serious effort at horror. It worked and it didn't work at the same time. So I was like, but what I really need to do is I need to make something to prove myself, that shows I have some substance as a filmmaker, that I can actually write something that doesn't have blood, or it's not every other word is the F-bomb. And hey, buddy, don't do that. And not right now when we're done. All right. So So what happened is I went and I made A Mind Beside Itself. It's a short film. It's a psychological drama. There's no blood in it. And I put a lot of time and effort into all the dialogue. It's double-ended. It's got like a surprise at the end. You can find it on YouTube. It's called A Mind Beside Itself. Okay. And I got it out there, and it got a slew of reviews, and they were all glowing. And honestly, there was one that was so nice. After I was like, did they even watch the movie I made? Because it felt like they were talking about Christopher Nolan or something. Like at that point, I was like, I made the next Memento. And thank you. And anyway, so I was like, all right, cool. But what happened is after, well, first of all, it's extremely hard to market a short. There's really not a whole lot that you can do with it. And I kind of decided that I had proven myself. I broke out of the horror genre. I did something different. I showed that when I really put effort and my mind into it, you know, I can make something that's like, you know, that's a thinker, you know, that someone might consider a thinker.
Sure. But
having worked on a horror film, and then just 1 second.
Sure.
Go to your room, please. Go, please. I love you, but anyway, so after that, I was like, I've worked on a horror film and I've worked on something else, and I've done a comedy before, and I kind of I didn't enjoy doing other things as much as I enjoyed getting my hands bloody. Right. And doing a horror film. It's like this whole other air on set, and you know, everybody's just, even though it might be bloody and gory and serious on screen and everything, but it's like a party while you're making it, because everybody's having such a good time. And I mean, that's not to say that there's not bad times or stress or anything, but I just enjoyed myself so much more when I do horror. So that's when I decided, all right, well, I'm going to go back into that. Well, then I kind of had this lull in productivity where I tried to do a couple things. They didn't really pan out. And then I ended up creating some events around Owensboro. And I ended up starting this one called Unscripted. It was through the Davis County Public Library. And the whole purpose behind that was there were so many other filmmakers that had come out of the woodwork after I did A Mind Beside Itself, Hallows Eve, and worked on a few other things that I felt like there was no real solid venue in this area that allowed filmmakers locally and regionally to really give them an opportunity to show their stuff. So I created Unscripted. It's a short film series at the Davis County Public Library, and the filmmakers come in, they show their short film, they do a brief Q&A, like 10, 15 minutes. And then after that, they go and they sit with the audience and they show their film again. But at this point, they conduct a live interactive, like a DVD commentary where they talk about the making of the film as they're sitting with the audience. Now, this was back in 2013. It became one of the most popular events that the library had done. And it was completely unexpected. And by the second screening, they had 80 people showing up for a room that only seated about 50. Right. And they had to open up their secondary screening room, and were having to like completely like bum rush to try to get their system set up. And so that took off and has since become an annual event and is still going on at the library today. I have stepped away from it to focus more on, I'm sorry. Hey, pause 1 second.
Yep. He's just like, he's like the best buddy kind of guy.
I was like, and he's like, hold on. I was like, oh my god, it sounds just like a hold on.
He's like, yeah, we got to pause for a second. Got up. No problem.
They were smaller. We got a little room.
All right, I'm back.
PJ Starks, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, Jurassic World ended apparently. So,
Uh-oh.
All right. So, anyway, so Unscripted. What happened is Unscripted took off. It did immensely better than anybody anticipated. It really threw me for a shock. And then at one point, like PBS came in and they were like, we want to do like an expose on you in this screening you started. And I was like, okay, cool.
Wow, that's awesome.
And yes, I mean, it was really neat. So like, so because it became so popular and they wanted to keep doing it, they came to me and they said, all right, we've been doing this for a while now. People still love it, but let's do something a little different. So I co-collaborated on an idea called the Unscripted Film School. And that was kind of an opportunity where we opened up a registration for people around Owensboro, that if anyone was interested, they could sign up and then come to the library. And there was one night where we shot we got two local filmmakers. We had them shoot short films. We had like a script contest and everything. And we chose scripts and those were the scripts that we shot. And we shot two films simultaneously on the same night, just on two different floors. And we opened it up to the public to register and come be production assistants, and then kind of get like a firsthand account of what it was like to be on an independent production.
That's awesome.
And it went over really, really well. So almost immediately the library came back to me and said, we want to do this again. But we want to make it bigger and we want to make it better. And I was like, okay. Yeah. So I was like, all right, pressure's on. I got to come up with something. But so that's when I kind of pulled out the fact that I was like, well, I've been wanting to do an anthology. And then I spent like an 8-hour period at work when I should have been working. But instead, I took about 8 hours that day and I completely conceived the idea of Volumes of Blood. And I knew we'd be shooting it at the library. So that's literally, I guess, leads up to how Volumes of Blood got started. But to answer your original question, yes, it's always been horror. If you cannot tell, I rant a lot. I talk a lot.
Never picked up on the segue at all there. Not at all.
I didn't think so.
No, that's awesome though. I really like that. But dealing with anthologies, I do want to ask. There seems to be a slight trend with anthologies over the last 2-3 years. A lot of them coming out lately. I'm a big fan of them. I've always enjoyed them. I guess with your involvement, how hard is it to select who you want to use? Like you said, you make movies with a bunch of friends, and then all of a sudden, well, it's professional go time. Buddy, I grew up with you. You're a great friend of mine, but your filming sucks. There's no way in hell you're ever going to be on something that I'm going to be pressing and releasing to the public.
Right.
And even on top of that, just like you'll see certain actors that are, you get certain cliques of actors that are always in the same films together, and you start seeing other production companies that are also always working together too. I guess what I'm trying to get to is, how did you figure out who you really wanted to be able to work with?
Well, like with the first Volumes of Blood, it was I knew exactly who I wanted to work with. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I was pretty, I don't consider myself a control freak necessarily, but I had a very specific outline and structure for what Volumes of Blood would be. And I didn't want just anybody to write. I didn't want to just go to a filmmaker and say, hey, you've got 12 minutes, write something for this movie.
Right.
I wanted to go in knowing what the stories would be, what the structure of the overall movie would be, because for anybody who doesn't or hasn't seen Volumes of Blood or doesn't know much about it, while it is a series of different types of short sequences, like in the first film, you've got a ghost sequence, you've got a monster sequence, you've got you've got a slasher sequence. They're still all interconnected, if not through the location, but maybe a character or something.
Right.
So
all together.
So even though they're different, they're still connected, and that's what I always wanted with Volumes of Blood. I wanted it to be interconnected. I wanted there to be this overall much bigger story happening than just a bunch of random shorts. So what happened is one of the writers from the Unscripted Film School, I actually got with him. And I said, I'm coming up with this anthology. Here are the stories within the movie. Would you like to write some of the scripts? And he said, yeah. So he ended up writing 2 of the segments, and I wrote 3 of the segments. And then there's various little pieces like here and there throughout the movie. And I ended up writing those. But I co-collaborated with him, and, he would send me his draft, and then I would get back with him and say, well, let's change this or let's do this. And then he would look at some of the other scripts that had been written. And if he had any ideas, and they're good, because if you have an idea that's better than what I've got, I'm going to take it.
Sure.
I'm going to use it, because that's smart filmmaking. If you sit there and you go, everything I write is scripture,
right,
then you really miss out on a chance to make a better film.
Right.
So it was like, but what I did is I kind of just went down the line. It wasn't like alphabetical. It was just, I wrote a list of filmmaker friends of mine that I wanted to work with. And then I contacted them and I said, I'm planning on making this. Would you like to be involved? And they said, yes. I would say, here are the scripts that are available. Choose one.
Okay.
They would choose a script, and that takes it down to 4. So then I'd go to the next filmmaker. I'd say, all right, this guy's on board. There's 4 scripts left. Would you like to be a part of this project? Sure. Let me look at the scripts, and so on and so forth. And eventually you get to that one filmmaker, and it's like, look, the other stories have been taken. Here's what's left. Are you interested in directing it or not? And luckily it was yes. And
did you ever come across somebody who didn't?
Not with well, on the first film, we had another filmmaker that was originally supposed to direct the wraparound, but he ended up having like a scheduling conflict. Okay. So then we ended up having to go find somebody else. So between that and the second one, I mean, honestly, I don't think we've had. I've had directors say, "This is my favorite story. I have no interest in the rest of the stories."
Okay.
But no, we haven't actually had someone say, no, I don't want to be on the project. If anybody had been, I can't think of, an instance where someone said, no, I don't want to do it. I think we had a couple that were like, I would love to do it, but I'm already working on this, sure. or I've got these things going on. I just would not have the time to do it. So yeah, but yeah, as far as like, but what happened was, so mainly it was like friends. It was working with filmmaker friends of mine on the first one. However, they weren't just, I mean, I don't know if, I won't sit here and say I have friends who make shitty movies. But I went to the filmmakers that at the time with the first one and even with the second one, I went with the filmmakers I felt were making the strongest indie efforts,
sure,
especially in the horror genre. With the second one, I wanted to step out of our comfort zone and not just work with friends. I said, all right, we got to do something different. I don't want all the same people working on the movie, because even though it's overall connected, I still want it to feel different, and I want it to feel like it's its own movie. And so with that, so we ended up going with almost all new directors, except for Nathan Thomas Milliner. Nathan worked on, he did Encyclopedia Satanica on the first film, and we all really liked what he did. And Nathan's a good friend of ours, and that was another thing. Like, I had met Nathan at a convention, like out in BFE, and we ended up talking all night, and then we became really good friends. And then when Volumes of Blood came along, we had wanted some kind of an opportunity to work together. Like, I really wanted to be able to work with him, and he also was like looking for directing opportunities. So that was like a really good fit. And then when it came, I would say he did right overall from a story perspective, from a character standpoint. On the first film, he did write the strongest script, which was Encyclopedia Satanica. And going into the second one, I said to Eric early on, when we knew we wanted to do a sequel, I said, every sequence in part 2 has to be Encyclopedia Satanica. It has to have, you know, interesting characters with a solid backstory, and we have to have, you know, good actors who can pull off the performances. And that's, and Encyclopedia Satanica kind of really had all that going for it. So that was our jumping off point when it came to making the sequel. So because he had written the strongest one, at first Nathan, when he knew we were making a sequel, he didn't really show much interest in wanting to do it. And then as we got a little further in the pre-production development process, he was like, all right, yeah, actually I'm interested. I want to be a part of it. I'd like, you know, let's all work together again. And then we all kind of put our heads together. And when it came time to write all the scripts, in the first film, I was a little bit more, I didn't let everybody see the scripts, even the writers. But going into the second story or second film, we actually had like writers meetings where we all knew what the stories were, and we all got together, like kind of like we did some Skype meetings and stuff like that. And we were like, all right, here's this story. What can we do to change it? What can we do to make it better? And that kind of a thing. So there was a lot more of a development process going on with the second movie. But with that one, I said, as far as directors are concerned, let's reach out and get people, not just locally, but now let's really look regionally and beyond, because like Justin Seaman made The Barn, and I had heard a lot about that. And up to the point in which I got in contact with him and everything, I still had not seen The Barn. I watched the trailer and I fell in love with the trailer.
Sure.
And I really liked the look, and you know, I read some interviews with him and done some research on him as a filmmaker, and I thought, I think this guy would be a really good fit. So I contacted Justin, and we got to talking, and we hit it off. And he's a super cool guy, and you know, he's really into the horror genre, and obviously he loves the whole '80s throwback thing, and that, you know, we have that in common, and so yeah, so it was like, all right, cool. So now we got this guy. He made this independent film. And you know, it's doing waves out there, and at the time, Volumes of Blood was doing waves, and it was like, all right, now we're going to make this sequel, and we've got a really good, strong team and group of people together. So, you know, we had a director from Pennsylvania, we had a director coming from like Louisville, and we had somebody coming from Nashville, and it was a really strong collaborative process. But it was also trying to take things to the next level. So like you said, it wasn't us just, now there were people that came back because we really wanted to work with them again. But overall, the process of making the sequel was a lot different, and it was a lot more, it was tighter knit. It was more professional. It was more collaborative. And but that's a good thing, because at that point you're really all working towards a common goal, and and everybody kind of cares about what the end product is gonna be once it's all said and done.
Right. So you've now worked with Justin, who was actually I just spoke to him. He was our closing guest for 2017. Loved The Barn. Great guy. Fun movie. You have now also worked with him, collaborating, moving forward with Mr. Rocky Gray with 1031. And so your second go around, working with Justin, I've spoke with Rocky a handful of times. He's actually donated some music as well as some artwork to House of Tortured Souls for the website, for our live sites as well. He's been a great help to us. Sent me the screener for his movie. Watched it, loved it, had a great time with it. I'm huge Halloween lover to begin with. On top of horror, bring Halloween to life in a film. It's doesn't get any better than that to me. How was it working with Rocky in his first film?
I mean, obviously, I wasn't able to because I was executive producing. I was at that point. In a lot of ways, you are typically with executive producing. You're either on set a lot or you can be offset a lot. And I was more of an offset a lot. Okay. But I did get to be on set for like Killing the Dance, that sequence, because John Holt directed it, and
right.
That's how I wound up. And I don't know if you caught my little, my very brief but that was actually supposed to be somebody else. And I was there that day, and John was like, the actor that was supposed to be this guy is not here. PJ, put the toilet seat on your head. You're going to do it. And I was like, all right, I guess.
Yep.
And it was a real toilet seat. And I don't know if you've ever stood around with a real toilet seat on your head, but those lids are heavy. My neck was hurting. Yeah, my neck was. Yeah, well, you should try it sometime.
I might, because it's not over yet.
It is not an easy thing to do, but as far as like working with Rocky, I mean, that was really cool because, first of all, I was already a fan of his, and I obviously ended up meeting him through his connection with Justin.
Okay.
And that's how Rocky came on to do a majority of the score for Volumes of Blood horror stories.
Right.
And so when it came time for them to start working on the sequel, on 1031, Rocky had seen what I was capable of doing as far as like the creative collaboration process, and then like marketing and promoting with my own films. And he was like, I think you would be an asset and be able to really help out on this project. So when it came to that, he throughout the process of making the movie, he would ask me questions like, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about that? I would get dailies. They would send me scenes to look at, or they would send me screenshots of the monsters and the villains and to get my thoughts and things like that. So it was just a really, really cool process. And it was so neat, that was aside from like Close Calls, which was the project I'd worked on with Richard Stringham. That was probably one of the really cool ones because I was kind of there from the ground floor all the way through to fruition of the project. And even like, and then it was kind of cool. I thought, I know there's a review that came out here recently that was like mentioned the fact that one of the sequences has a extremely shameless plug for the Volumes of Blood card game in one of the sequences, and they kind of gave it like a wah wah, but that was all Brett's idea, so I'm blaming that all Brett. So that's but he made Bone Jangles, so
right, there you go. Right.
But yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was, and Rocky's actually like, when he came to the premiere, he's so much more talkative online than he is in person.
I kind of had a feeling.
He's super quiet and he's super soft spoken. He never cusses, which is weird because you think a metal guy, horror films. For the most part, I'm holding it back, but nine times out of 10, I'm usually like dropping the F word just very casually.
Sure.
It kind of depends on what situation I'm in, but like Rocky will never do that. He's got very strong convictions and stuff like that. And he just doesn't do those things. So it was really interesting like getting to know him and working with him. And then even when I met him at the premiere for Volumes of Blood Horror Stories, when they came, it was just really, he's a really interesting guy, but he's super cool and really down to earth. And there's another project that I've kind of been developing. I won't say much about it right now, because I try not to say too much about things until I know that they may or may not happen.
Sure.
I don't want to jinx it, and B, there was a very brief period of time where I became like that filmmaker who talks a really good game and is like, I'm going to make this movie and this is going to be the greatest next thing since sliced Wonder Bread.
Right.
And then the movie didn't happen. And I became that guy, the guy who talked about making a movie all the time and
Right.
made it out to be like it was going to be this big thing. And then it went, and I had that kind of stigma follow me around for quite a bit of time. And after that, I vowed that I would never be that guy again. So I try not to brag too much about other projects, but like, it was funny because I came up with this idea. It's another anthology, I will say that. And I came up with this idea and I was like, I really would love to do something like this. And I had told Rocky all about it and kind of gave him like the rundown and the early synopsis and stuff like that. And we talked about it and he really liked the idea. And he was like, dude, if you do that, you've got to let me be one of the directors. And it was funny because, he got so inspired by our conversation. The very next day, he presented me with artwork. He was like, he goes, I made this last night for it. And it is phenomenal. So I immediately took what he gave me and then I created some stuff around it and I made like an early poster. And I'm still trying to get it made. It's like I said, it's another anthology. It would have a lot more filmmakers involved. It's not going to be like Volumes of Blood. It's not going to fall within that universe or anything. Okay. It would literally be kind of an excuse for me to work with some of these super talented people I've met along the way that I haven't been able to work with. Okay. You know, because it could, and no directors are directly involved with it yet, but you know, there's people out there that I would love to be given the opportunity to work with, like Jonathan Straighton, who made The Night of Something Strange, and of course like Victor Matthew, who made The Monster Project, or Patrick Ria, who made Arbor Demon. So it's like I've been able to network with all these guys, and there's I'm would love to work with them. Now, will they work on this movie or this project? I don't know. I mean, that of course that's all up to them once we get to that point. But yeah, I really cannot remember why I started telling you about that. Other than the fact that we were talking about Rocky and that kind of brought that up. But that was a part of that became a part of the process of working with Rocky. And I think it kind of is a testament to how generous and cool he is, because right. he was inspired by this conversation we had, and he took it upon himself to like go that extra mile and make this extremely cool piece of artwork to use on the poster. And typically, even if I'm inspired, usually I'm like, man, I got to do this, but there's TV to watch. Right. So he's just a better person than me at the end of the day. But yeah, but I think 1031 is a really fun movie, and it should be out on VOD at some point this year. I know they're kind of working on that. There's some early limited edition DVDs that Rocky's put together that they're selling through 1031film.com.
Right.
And
right.
anyone who's interested in checking it out can obviously go there and take a gander. And it's got, a ton of like really like Zane Hirschberger and Justin Seaman, of course. Brett Dieger did a sequence, and it's John Holt did a sequence, and they had made the Dooms Chapel Horror, and then of course they were a part of Volumes of Blood Horror Stories, which is also available on VOD now through Amazon, iTunes, Vudu, and a few others.
Very nice plug there, sir. I like that.
Thank you. if you want to check that out at some point. But yeah, I think, if you're looking for a good, solid, like, Halloween anthology, you really can't. You right now, aside from maybe like Trick or Treat, I don't think there's another one that hits the nail on the head like 1031 does.
No, I gotta agree with you. That's a great comparison, and yeah, it was a good film. It was a lot of fun to watch. Huge potential, and it definitely captured the spirit of 1031, which is exactly what Rocky was going for. I believe last he mentioned to me the official release was sometime in March.
Okay,
I believe.
like are you talking about VOD?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. No, obviously, as you said, though, he does have sales going on it for right now. And I definitely wish him the best of luck with that, because it was a great project. So you are obviously, as whoever might not know already, you are a family man.
I am.
As we took an intermission earlier for.
We did.
What oh God, how can I put it? My wife and I both share the passion for horror. We have a room kind of dedicated to our collectibles and autographs and knickknacks and Halloween stuff that I just think it's cool and we never put away. That's one thing to have a toy or something. Your kids are at the age now where, Daddy, I want to go with Daddy. I want to go to work with Daddy. Daddy, you're cool. You get to play and make movies. Daddy, I want to go with you, Daddy. Now, granted, you're not making a Serbian film kind of a movie, but how hard is it for you to say, crossing that boundary of making what you want to make and being able to still protect your kids as a father?
Well, I mean, I think it's the same as any parent. You just you have to kind of determine what type of person they are and what type of person they're developing into, and then I mean, when I was 5 and 6 and 7, and I'm watching these movies like Dawn of the Dead, and like I have all these vivid memories of like trying to eat spaghetti while watching Dawn of the Dead, and I watch the movie now and I see how cheesy the blood looks and
Sure.
so cheesy some of the bites look, and I mean, obviously it's one of those films that I love and I'll always love, but it still has that kind of an air of cheese to it, which is part of its charm. And I can't say, like, because of watching those films that I lose my innocence sooner than maybe like what my kids are. I mean, I can't really say, but like with my kids, I am a little bit more protective. They've seen some things, but I think I'm going about it differently.
Well, you mentioned your introduction to horror, obviously with your grandmother as a kid, but for you was Ghostbusters. You and I growing up, we had Ghostbusters. We had milder horror movies that we could be introduced.
Right.
Whereas now everything is internet, everything is extreme, everything is pushing those boundaries. Point of, all right, my kid's at the age now where he could handle a couple boo scare movies, but wow, everything out there is so over the top. They don't really, in my opinion, there are films, don't get me wrong, but there isn't that wide a variety as perhaps when you and I started off, where things weren't as extreme and images that weren't going to burn into the back of our minds once we left the theater or something like that. So it seems to be more of a challenge nowadays. As a father myself, and it is hard, what do you let them watch? And then at the age of saying, well, you're at the age, so what else can I do?
I think what I've done is I started them off with more milder things. The way I introduced my oldest Logan to horror films was I started him off with all the Universal monsters, because I think with that you get you get a solid foundation for what kind of really kicked off the horror genre. I've tried to show him some silent movies or some like really cheesy like giant leeches type movies, or Day of the Triffids and stuff like that. And there's only so much of that he can really take,
Sure.
But like my youngest Connor has seen Creature from the Black Lagoon and he loves it. And
Nice.
but the funny thing is like if you were to go upstairs like when you go up to the right immediately is like I have this big DVD room. It's full of movies. That's kind of my addiction. There's like 4,000 Blu-rays and DVDs up there. But
Nice.
then like I have the walls lined with, things of the projects I've worked on and posters and things that I really love. I have this like 8-foot Friday the 13th stand up that you can put your head through and it looks like Jason's crushing your head. So my kids all they know of who those are, much to the behest of my wife, who is not a big horror fan. She helps out. She's production manager on the projects and things, but that's kind of an opportunity for us to be able to spend time together. And she's watched some horror films and some of them she likes. If it's got Johnny Depp in it or something like that, she'll appreciate it. If Chris Hemsworth is in it and he's taking his shirt off, that's her favorite horror film. Cabin in the Woods. She loves that, of course.
Oh, well,
but it's funny because when in the beginning Connor would see, he would pull a movie off my shelf and he'd say, "Who is this?" And I'd say, "That's Michael Myers." And he'd be like, "Oh, okay." And he knew that these were films that I was not going to let him see yet.
Right.
And really, the more I think about it, like he could probably handle Halloween Now, the original, because
Sure.
I mean, there is that brief moment of nudity in the film, but overall it's pretty bloodless and there is violence, but there's nothing. I would say there's less violence in the original Halloween than what you would find in an Avengers film today, which of course they've seen all those movies. So, so really like for them, it's just been kind of starting them off slowly. But of course, at this point, they've seen Ghostbusters. And then I started them on the films that I grew up with, like every year we watch Gremlins, or they've seen the Monster Squad and some of these other movies. So it's like these films that are horror, but are also fairly harmless and aren't going to completely smash your innocence into pieces.
Right.
Now, of course, there's some films like Last House on the Left or Hills Have Eyes, that have like graphic rape, because honestly, I don't want to have to explain to them what rape is. So I'm like, I'll leave some of these out of the picture and they can kind of figure that out on their own a little later on, so but yeah, it's kind of just now, of course, like now that Connor is old enough to where he can get on iPads and YouTube and stuff like that, he's come home and he'll be like, "Dad, I watched all these scenes from Freddy versus Jason." And I'm like, "Oh man, your mom's gonna love that." But
it's all right. Johnny Depp was with Freddy, so it's okay.
That's very. You know what? I'm going to use that excuse. Thank you. I'm going to take that. And when she says, she says, you're not letting the kids watch A Nightmare on Elm Street, I'll go, Johnny Depp's in it, and that'll be it.
Dinner now. See, there you go.
So it's really just kind of start, and then of course it's funny because nowadays you have a lot more kid-based horror. Mm-hmm. Like Monster House and Caroline, and even that most recent Disney film that's out in theaters where it's like the Day of the Dead celebration and everybody's skeletons and things. And
oh crap, I can't remember the name of it.
It's got life. Doesn't have life in the title? Life of something.
Yeah, it's something off the Muerte del Dia.
Right. So, so it's like they've seen all those movies, A Nightmare Before Christmas and things like that. So there's a lot more options nowadays. Frankenweenie, even, it's for kids to be able to experience horror without, taking something away from it that may be completely disturbing.
It is nice to be able to introduce them on lighter levels and let them enjoy it and find the light side to it. I mean, I was the first person against Adam Sandler's Hotel Transylvania's And since they've been released, my wife has bought all of them for me for Christmases. And anytime I even having the DVDs, anytime I see them on TV or Netflix, it still gets played. It just for me, for my sake. I do. I absolutely love them and adore them.
Same here.
But yeah. So yeah, I mean, I guess that's an endless battle of of teaching kids and mixing them with stuff that can be technically. They always say you're going to have nightmares, and here you are making those nightmares on film, so to speak. And I was kind of wondering how hard of a battle it was for you to be able to eliminate work with the kids not wanting to push buttons and know too much about it, so to speak.
I mean, when I'm editing the films, to be honest, they have not seen either Volumes of Blood movie.
Okay.
They haven't seen either film. They're both in the films. Connor gets even more of a more featured role in the sequel, and Logan plays a trick-or-treater. And then in the first movie, they're both just kind of kids in the library. Now, they haven't seen the entire Volumes of Blood, but I did let them see the sequence they were in because, I mean, it was in black and white. It was a supernatural ghost kind of a thing.
Right.
There really wasn't much blood, and when there was blood, it was in black and white. So it wasn't anything that kept them up all night. There were, I mean, I would say it might have some people with disturbing images, but I mean, it wasn't anything that, like you said, I feel would cause nightmares or create a serial killer out of it or anything. So, but like,
that's all that matters.
Right. And I think, now typically they're not around while I'm editing because when I get in the zone, I pretty much just blank everything else out. Sure, but I have brought them in and kind of shown them the process of how that works. I worked with Logan a few years ago when Connor was born. I shot tons of video, like when we were at the hospital, just all kinds of stuff. And then I thought it would be kind of a cool way for Logan to welcome his brother into the world if he and I kind of worked together on making this short little movie about the birth of his brother and how he felt as going from an only child to now there's someone else that's a part of the family. So in that respect, I actually sat down with Logan and we went through all the footage, and I kind of showed him the process of editing and how to put music and how to create a scene and things of that nature. And even now, Logan is really heavily involved in like making his own videos and things. Yeah, he got a GoPro for Christmas, and it is just like strapped to his head 24/7. I'm honestly a little jealous because I'm like, I want a GoPro, but yeah, he makes his own. I mean, he's been making his own movies with the GoPro now. Like he has his best friend Dayton comes over to the house, and they've already made some slasher films and things like that. I mean, they're bloodless, but but with this, he's like. It's a slasher film, but it's all from the viewpoint of the killer. So like you see the killer stalking the victims, and he's got his machete and everything, and you kind of see the process of him going after people, and he's made a few like giant killer spider movies and things of that nature. So he's really, but it's funny too because when we're in public, if we run into somebody or like last year towards the tail end. I and a bunch of others ended up working with Jeffrey Reddick, who did the Final Destination. He created the Final Destination franchise. Mm-hmm. Dead Awake was one of his recent releases. So, like, I've since talked to him a whole lot, and he's from Kentucky and everything. And there was this article that came out in Kentucky Monthly Magazine, and Jeffrey wrote it. And then I came home with it, and I was showing my wife, and I'm like, "Hey, look, check this out! Like, how cool is this?" And Logan's standing there going. Yeah, that's real great. You're in another magazine. Cool. I make movies too. Like that's and he'll do. He's standing right. Go,
Are you talking about me?
Go put a shirt on. Anyway, so
that's awesome. Hey, buddy. Doesn't fall from the tree. I see. That's awesome.
Yeah, so so like even if we're out in public, he'll do that. Somebody will be like, "Oh, I finally caught Volumes of Blood horror stories last night, and I really enjoyed it." and then hey, but they'll be like, oh, we really enjoyed it, and Logan will be standing there and he'll be like, yeah, I made a movie and it's on YouTube and it's got 5,000 views and that's more than any dad's gotten ever. And I'm just like, yeah,
you are.
My kid's my biggest fan, apparently.
He does not have a YouTube channel.
He doesn't have a YouTube channel, but Into the World 2 has a bunch of views on YouTube.
So tell me what's coming up. I've been watching your posts online. Some rather exciting things in the future, I hear. Yeah,
right now, Cryptids is in production. That's the next. It's a creature feature anthology, and that's John Holt's working on it. Zane Hirschberger, Justin are all working on it, and I think that one attracted me because I'm like slasher films. I'm a huge creature feature monster. I don't think they make enough good monster movies.
No.
So I've seen a lot of the, like, Brett DeYager is back. He's on this one too. So it's like I've seen all the monsters and like the early concept designs, and they've even done some like camera tests because some of the creatures have been built because it's all practical effects.
Nice. Very nice.
Yeah, because you know, all the kills in the Volumes of Blood horror films, except for one in the first one, it had a digital effect, but like all the kills in the sequel were all practical. I'm huge on practical effects. Yes. And obviously, if you've seen Justin's work, if you've seen John's work, it's kind of the same thing. It's like, I think there's this huge resurgence of practical effects. Just it looks better. It feels more organic within the given shots and the film itself. So it's just like, it's, in my opinion, it's better to do it that way. Well, and so that's how they're doing all the monsters in Cryptids. I mean, it's completely practical. So it's guys in rubber suits and puppets and just all that. But I mean, they look so good. So I really cannot wait for it. And it's not entirely shot. Some sequences have been completely filmed. They're being edited. Some are in the process now of getting ready to be filmed, and there's a few that haven't been. But yeah, it's definitely one of the ones that I'm excited about. There's another one I recently came on board called The Viral Demon, and it's a found footage movie. And I guess kind of one of my goals is if it's a horror, more than likely I'm going to enjoy it no matter what subgenre it is. Right. And I might enjoy some more than others, but just to be given the opportunity to work on all these different types of subgenres. I mean, for me, that's one of the most exciting things about helping produce some of these projects. So like Jeremy, who has made The Viral Demon, asked me to come on board and kind of help him with promotions and marketing and a few other things, and help find him distribution and stuff like that, which that's actually already in the works. But I'm really excited about that because Jeremy has come up with a really cool and unique found footage that deals with demons and witchcraft and things of that nature. So it's got this really cool storyline that's not something that it's not something I've seen done before. So The Viral Demon really it plays a strong role in the movie as far as like and then it touches on this whole obsession with recording everything and in video chats and what we're doing right now. It touches on that and talks about like the impact it has on society. So it's got kind of a commentary happening, and it's I think it's something that a lot of people, like, once you watch it, you're going to be able to relate to it. Maybe not the witchcraft and possession part, but at least it's like, the sitting down and reconnecting with people or just talking to friends through social media and kind of this obsession that we have with it. And so I'm kind of excited for that to get out there and to see how that's going to do.
It sounds definitely intriguing. Any last words? I know I have definitely kept you long enough. I know the families are calling, and trust me, my dogs are barking with their legs crossed to go outside too.
Well, my wife's in Nashville tonight, so she doesn't care what I'm doing right now. So I can sleep on the couch watching a scary movie tonight, so I'm good to go.
So the kids are all hyped up on Mountain Dew right now. Got
Yeah,
it.
basically. Yeah, we left their grandmother's house, and the first thing she does is give them a bag full of Kit Kats and Hershey bars. Anyway.
Every day is Halloween, Dad. Trick or treat.
Yeah, every day.
In closing, anything you want to let us know? Anything special coming up?
Well, you know, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I did want to add, I know when you were on vacation, and we do apologize for having bombarded you down there on vacation.
That's no problem.
You got to meet our chief editor, Pat Williams.
I did.
She definitely sends her best to you, appreciates you taking the time to say hello to her, and wants to know if there's any future word on the werewolf film.
Leave me alone.
Oh, the werewolf is, I keep saying, like, I'm a huge slasher fan. I'm a huge monster fan. Werewolves are probably my favorite of all the creatures.
Me too.
But anyways, I love, he's a little werewolf.
Uh-oh.
Anyways, don't hit me. Don't. That's child abuse. That's parental abuse. Seriously, stop. But no, so when it was funny because when we were on the set of the second film and we were shooting the murder, death, killer sequence, just do that right there. Right. The murder, death, killer sequence with the Atticus Crow character, we took a break and we were standing outside, and John Holt, that's something that John and I share, and that's our love for werewolf movies. And we're like, as terrible as the transformation sequence is in Bad Moon, it's like we just can't not love that film. And he found a monster. Anyway, so seriously. Anyway, so when we were talking, I said in the third movie, if there was going to be a third movie, which I'll be honest, I kind of had an idea already of what I would like to do for the third one, but I said I want to do a werewolf sequence in the third movie. And John was like, "You're gonna do a werewolf sequence, and I'm gonna direct it." So he bugged the crap out of me just constantly, even after we got done and we started having things come out about, you know, how we were in early development for Volumes of Blood 3. He was like, there's better still be a werewolf sequence. And there has been. And I came up with a concept that I don't feel had been done before. And I'm really excited about the storyline and you know, the whole thing. So it was written. I came up with the concept. I gave it to Jason Turner. He was one of the writers for the third film. He wrote the script. I came in. I made some changes and kind of, you know, tweaked it and things like that. And it's probably one of my favorite sequences, just script wise, for the third film. And because I'm such a fan of werewolves, I'm really. Hey, stop, buddy. It's like I'm just really excited to be able to do that because, like I said, it's an approach towards werewolves that I don't feel has ever been done before. Now, I say that now, and then after we make it and it comes out, someone's going to go, "This movie was made in Beirut and it's the same concept." And I'll be like, "Yeah, apparently so. There's nothing new under the sun." But I'm pretty excited. So you can let her know that yes, there is going to be a werewolf sequence. We're working with Petrie Entertainment. They had the Dark Cuts arm that they actually released Volumes of Blood horror stories, which you can check out on VOD right now, Amazon, Vudu, iTunes, VHX, Google Play. So you can check. You should definitely check that out. But we had a meeting with like a phone conference with them last week, and that was one of the Andy Palmer, who's one of their head guys. Was telling me, he's like, you know, I really like the werewolf script. It's fun. It's a fun script. And so I'm really excited about doing that one. And it has one of the biggest set pieces that we've ever done on any project. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that comes together and develops. But like I said, I'm really excited. So yeah, you can let her know.
I will, and I'm sure she will definitely be watching when this is posted, and she definitely appreciaes that.
Hey, you guys stop. Leave your little brother alone.
So we've got actor, writer, director, producer, executive producer. father, weekend father, warrior, family, and all around great guy, PJ Starks.
Thank you so much. You could probably take actor out of there. You could take actor out of there. I don't really consider myself much of an actor.
Volumes of blood, boys and girls. Definitely keep an eye on that and everything else that PJ has opened up to us about tonight. PJ, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you so much for having me on. This was a lot of fun.
I hope you and the boys have a very restful rest of the night.
We'll try.
PJ, you take care.
That was a yeah right laugh. That's what that was. That was yeah right.
You'll be up all night.
All right, hey. Stop it or I'm gonna make you watch Razorback with me. Quit. All right. Sorry.
PJ, you have a great night. Thanks again.
Thank you.
How's the Souls Live? This is John signing off. You guys have a very great weekend. Talk to you guys later and keep it evil.